Welcome to the HR Book Club with HR Recruitment Solutions. In this series, we talk to the authors of the best HR books out there, and today I'm delighted to be joined by David Liddle to discuss transformational culture. Hi, David, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Leon, and thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this today.
No problem at all. So I suppose we should start with introductions. So why don't you tell us a bit more about yourself and how you got to this point in your career?
Sure. So as you said, my name's David Liddle. I'm the Chief Executive of the TCM Group. I set the TCM Group up in 2001, so 20 years ago. It's our 20th anniversary today. And we specialised originally, thank you, in providing mediation and conflict management services to companies through mediation, coaching and workplace investigations. We also provide training for organisations around those particular areas. And more recently, we've been supporting organisations going through cultural change programmes and helping them to rewrite and reframe some of their more traditional HR processes. In fact, nothing gives me greater pleasure, Leon, than tearing up a discipline, grievance or performance management procedure and helping organisations put something in place which is more human, more humane, more values-based.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, thank you for that. So let's talk about the book. So I think it's been very recently launched, right? So tell us about transformational culture. What's the book about and who's it aimed at, David?
And so it was my second book. So my first book was Managing Conflict, published in 2017. This book was published on the 3rd of September by Kogan Page. The book offers HR professionals, leaders, union reps, a blueprint for a culture which is just, fair, inclusive, sustainable and high performing. Within the text, I look at a number of areas in our organisations. In particular, I look at our justice models, which I describe as retributive and punitive, intrinsically adversarial. So in terms of adjusting our organisational cultures, I make a case for adjusting our organisational justice systems and removing retributive justice, the blame, shame and punish model of justice, and replacing it instead with a more restorative model of justice, which I've dubbed transformational justice. So I developed a transformational culture blueprint with a number of eight enablers within that model that can help an organisation to drive the necessary culture change in order to become a values-based, person-centred and high-performing organisation.
Okay, fantastic. So it seems like this fits with your morals and your views, but what motivated you to write this book?
I've been working with organisations for many years, Leon, trying to help them to develop just, fair cultures and climates and workplace climates. And I've worked in very complex organisations dealing with significantly difficult situations from bullying, harassment, discrimination. And as a mediator or as a consultant, I walk in and I'm often there to kind of pick up the pieces after a problem's gone wrong. I've often looked up into the systems of these organisations from the basement, and I've looked up at these apparatus of despair and doom, destruction, and I've said to myself, why is it that these smart thinking, intelligent HR professionals, leaders and managers who run organisations so complicated it makes my head spin, why can they not see the damage that their HR policies and management systems are doing to their people? You know, their mental health, their physical health, their engagement, their productivity, their performance, their joy of work, their ability to shine, to create inclusive workplaces. And what motivated me to write the text is there's a real understanding as we're coming through COVID, you know, looking at sort of social justice movements, which have been a catalyst and an antecedent to increased employee activism and employee voice within our workplaces. We've asked people to bring the whole self to work, and then when they've started to challenge us and disagreed with us and, you know, shared views that perhaps don't align with our own, we don't know how to deal with it, and we subcontract these issues to managers who don't know how to deal with issues because we've never trained them, or we put them through a one-day handling difficult conversations course in 2006, hoping that they'll be able to deal with these complex dynamics. We subcontract issues to policy frameworks which are broken, dreary, tired, corrosive and negative, and then ultimately we subcontract the problem to our lawyers and end up propping up the P&L of the local law firm. And I've seen this happen in so many organisations, big, small, you know, various levels of maturity across the private, public and not-for-profit sectors. And it strikes me as being kind of crazy that we allow this to happen. And as we're looking now to build back better, approach the new normal, you pick your term, whatever it might mean, it seems to me that this is a great opportunity for our organisations to think differently about how they deal with people issues. And one thing's for sure, we cannot affect change in our organisations by maintaining the status quo of the retributive, adversarial, destructive systems of power, control, discrimination, misogyny, anxiety, fear, uncertainty. This is what employees tell me they experience when they come up against these justice models. We cannot help people to shine. We cannot possibly hope to run a modern, compassionate, effective organisation relying on the old orthodoxies of organisational culture. And it was that really motivated me to put pen to paper and explore some of these issues and write the book.
Yeah, very transformational.
Indeed.
So how did you find the writing process, and what challenges did you find with that?
We moved house in May, but prior to that, my office was in a cold shed in the back garden. So I wrote the book through the third lockdown. So we're now in September 21. So this is back in January, February 21. It was cold, it was wet, it was miserable, it was lonely. We were locked down, Leon. It was just me and the computer. So it was hard work. I also found, because in Managing Conflict, my first book, I was able to talk from deep experience of 20, 30 years of managing conflict. I knew the subject matter inside out, upside down. This one was more of a vision and an idea, but I was incredibly grateful to contributors. So I spent a lot of time developing case studies, researching the topic, listening to other people here in the UK and also overseas, drawing out some of those case studies. So it was hard work. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Maybe didn't think that some of the cold mornings I was doing it. But what I also found is there is a real movement, a desire in our organisation to do something differently. But the question people kept asking me was this, is where on earth do we start? And is there a blueprint or a model that we can follow or begin to deploy that's not prescriptive? And it's not didactic, it's not telling the organisation what they should do, but it's providing a framework of support to help an organisation on their cultural change journey. So that I looking back at it now, I absolutely loved it and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good. So obviously you've only just really finished writing it to an extent. Is there other books? Is there other ideas of other books you're going to do in the future, or is this it for a while and you're quite happy just to let this one go?
Yeah, I mean, this one's a big one for me and for the organisation, and I think culture is conflict was always a bit embarrassing. People didn't want to talk about conflict. That we don't have conflict in our organisation. To even acknowledge that we might need a mediator was a sign or an admission of some failure. So we often found with conflict management that it was something that we kind of came in with by stealth. And it was really the enlightened organisations who used us. Of course, there are a great many. Culture, I think, is a bigger topic and one which is more normalised and doesn't feel quite so embarrassing for people to discuss. So I'm really enjoying having conversations now with organisations who are determined to make their cultures more values-based and person-centred. I'd love to sign, in fact, I will be signing up for a PhD to look at the transformational culture model that I've developed, the 8 enablers, the culture hub, the 7 C's of transformationalism, and how they are codependent on each other and the interface and interplay between each of those. And I've developed a model in the book called the culture flow system, looking at the flow from culture to climate, looking at the strategy, the purpose, the values, the processes, the behaviours, the mindset, the felt experience of employees. And there's a few tools I've generated that I'm really excited about doing some more academic level assessment and research in terms of their impact, their efficacy, and their effectiveness within our organisations.
Fantastic. So more of a focus on seeing this play out, some of the ideas you have, and sit and research around that. Okay, interesting.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly right.
Cool. So we always end on this question. So if you were to recommend a HR book, and it can't be either of your own, which book would you recommend to a HR professional?
I mean, Amy Edmondson's The Fearless Organisation has got to be up there. I think is a very powerful text. Michael West's Compassionate Leadership is recently published. I'm a big fan of Michael West. obviously drawing from healthcare, but I think it's applicable across all sectors. And the third one, which people may not have heard of, is a book called Discipline Without Punishment, and it's called by a gentleman called Dick Grote. I hope I've pronounced that correctly.
Yeah.
And really, as I mentioned at the start of the meeting today, I'm a big fan of removing those disciplinary and grievance procedures and replacing them with a resolution framework.
Yeah.
And our resolution framework helps organisations to remove the acrimonious and adversarial systems for resolving issues. And I was inspired by Discipline Without Punishment, using the term reminders rather than warnings, using the term resolution meetings rather than hearings. So this is the stuff that I advocate in the book, but drawing heavily on that. So those would be my 3 recommendations.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us, David.
You're very welcome, Leon. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you for inviting me.